Well, it's good to be with you again for a few minutes today as we look at Psalm 6, Psalm chapter 6. And this is the first of about 7 psalms in the Psalter that we call penitent psalms. In other words, they're psalms where the psalmist, in this case David, laments his distress, both internally as well as what enemies are doing to him, but knowing that this distress is all a result of his own sin. And so let me read through it, and then we'll just look at a couple of things that the Lord may want to use here. So Psalm 6, for the choir director with stringed instruments, upon an 8-string lyre, a psalm of David. Verse 1. O Lord, do not rebuke me in your anger, nor chasten me in your wrath. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am pining away. Heal me, O Lord, for my bones are dismayed, and my soul is greatly dismayed. But you, O Lord, how long? Return, O Lord, rescue my soul. Save me because of your loving kindness. For there is no mention of you in death. In Sheol, who will give you thanks? I am weary with my sighing. Every night I make my bed swim. I dissolve my couch with my tears. My eye has wasted away with grief. It has become old because of all my adversaries. Depart from me, all you who do iniquity. For the Lord has heard the voice of my weeping. The Lord has heard my supplication. The Lord receives my prayer. All my enemies will be ashamed and greatly dismayed. They shall turn back. They will suddenly be ashamed. So we get a feel for the distress that King David is in here as he recognizes that he is under the discipline of God for his own sin. And he just makes this request, O Lord, O Yahweh, do not rebuke me in your anger, nor chasten me in your wrath. Now we have all of the New Testament revelation that places like Hebrews chapter 12 that reminds us that as a good father disciplines their own child, so the Lord disciplines us. And he does that to produce in us the peaceable fruit of righteousness. That doesn't mean that there isn't distress when we realize our sinfulness. It doesn't mean that that discipline is enjoyable or pleasurable. In fact, Hebrews says that. No discipline from God is pleasurable in the moment. And yet he's after the fruit of the peaceable fruit of righteousness. And so here David well understands what God could do to him because of his sin. He has watched what God has done to enemies. And he understands, and there's some sense of that fear and respect for God. And he goes on then and really makes his complaint, his desire, be gracious to me, O Lord, because I'm pining away, I'm wasting away. Heal me, O Lord, for my bones are dismayed. My bones are complaining about the consequences of my sin, and my soul is greatly dismayed. But you, O Yahweh, O Lord, how long? And you just get David's sense, how long am I going to pay the price for my sin? How long, O Lord? And there's this sense of, I can't take this much longer. Because the consequences of sin affect our soul. They affect us physically, and we see that here in David's request. And yet he says, return, O Lord, rescue my soul, rescue me in my innermost being, save me because of your loving kindness. Here we come to that word hesed again. Your everlasting love, your loving kindness, your mercy. Lord, don't rescue me because of any merit I have. Don't rescue me because I deserve it. Rescue me because of your loving kindness. For there is no mention of you in death. In Sheol, who will give you thanks? Now, Sheol here, or not just here, but is a word that refers to the place of the dead, whether righteous or unrighteous, generally speaking. Sometimes it's used of the place of the wicked dead, but it's often used, as I think it is here, in a more general way. And David here is expressing this fear of his that if he dies under the consequences of his sin, the discipline of the Lord, he will be removed from God's presence. Now we know that if a person is a follower of Jesus, a true believer, and they die as a judgment of God against them for their sin, like we read about in 1 Corinthians 11, to not partake of the Lord's Supper in an unworthily manner. And as he says there, for this reason, some are sick and some are asleep. Some of you have died. Now we know that you go to heaven based upon what Christ has done, not what we do, and that discipline, that judgment of the Lord to his own children means that in fact they go to heaven still. And so we have a little bit more clarity on that one than King David did here. But he's saying, I am weary from my sighing. Every night I make my bed swim, a picture of tears. I dissolve my couch with my tears. My eye is wasted away with grief. It has become old because of all my adversaries. I don't know how I can cry anymore, David said. Overseeing my sin as an offense against you, God, and the consequences that it has brought to my soul, to my bones, and even my enemies are taking advantage of me. He says in verse 8, depart from me, all you who do iniquity, for the Lord has heard the voice of my weeping. And here he, as a king, would demand the evil ones to leave his kingdom. And in fact, that's the way Jesus uses this. For example, in Matthew 7:23, many will come to me in that day and say, Lord, Lord, didn't I do many mighty miracles in your name? And he will say to them, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, quoting from here. I never knew you. It's also used in Luke 13, verse 27. But here he says, depart from me. Why? Because the Lord has heard the voice of my weeping. The Lord has heard my supplication. The Lord receives my prayers. And this is the way he ends the psalm. All my enemies will be ashamed and greatly dismayed. They shall turn back. They will suddenly be ashamed. In other words, the Lord has heard my prayer. The Lord is answering my prayer. Enemies, the Lord will take care of you. We see from the psalm the great pain that our sin brings to ourselves under the loving discipline of the Lord. And it's a very appropriate way to lament our sin and to know that the Lord hears our prayers. He receives our prayers. And yes, even using some of the New Testament, he will restore us. 1 John 1:9. If we agree with God about our sins, if we confess our sins, say the same thing about our sin as God says, he's faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. That does not mean that all of the temporal consequences of our sin are taken away. Sometimes he's phenomenally merciful and he does that. Sometimes he knows we just have to experience some of the pain as a reminder of what it means to walk in disobedience to our God, to reject his love and to choose our own way. So my encouragement is that you just read through this And if you have sin in your life, lament it and trust Christ for your restoration, your getting back on track. If you're thinking about any sin, let this be a proactive reminder of the pain your sin will bring to your own life, to your soul, to your bones, to giving others opportunity to take advantage of you. Well, may the Lord bless you, and may He use this penitent song to bring a great sense of dependence upon the Lord and a fresh desire to obey Him in all that He calls you to do. God bless you.